Engineer Obam, I have given you the mic the first one because I'd like you to start introducing yourself. I know I introduced you earlier, but then I forgot to say that you are also on TikTok and give your handle. So maybe right now you can do that.
Okay, I'm not on TikTok, but maybe the only thing I can add to what you said, I used to work for the Ministry of ICT and Digital Economy as a chief policy advisor. So I'm a retired civil servant. So in the meantime, I help out with I work with Huawei and I do some other things, but my main work is to provide my expertise is spectrum management. That's why you saw there's a lot of spectrum. So in my presentation, so that's an area that I'm very familiar with. But of course, policy, regulations, and digital transformation. I hope that suffices.
Yeah. James.
Thank you, Kevin. Somebody made a comment that the photo you had put up there doesn't look like me, and I was like, what is the use of filters, guys? What is the use of filters? Yeah, so James Langat is my name. I work at Safaricom PLC. I've worked there for, I think, 18 years now. Really passionate about technology, energy. At Safaricom PLC, I'm responsible for network rollout and operations. So when you cannot press the green button, you cannot press the green button, I'm probably somebody who needs to be working to make sure you can press the green button at any time. Thank you.
All right. Then now the new members into this discussion, starting with you, the regulator.
Thank you. My name is Engineer Edwin Ombega. I'm from the Communications Authority of Kenya, where I work in the Universal Service Fund Department, in charge of mobile network expansions. Previously, I've been with the Spectrum Department, and now we are concerned about digital inclusion, which is our main area of focus. Thank you so much.
All right, and finally, Adam.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam. I work at Huawei now for about 10 years. Before I was in Huawei Kenya, I was in Huawei China in the headquarters. Before that, I was in various NGOs. So I come actually from an NGO background, not an engineering background. At our Kenya office, I deal just with Kenya, whereas Engineer Obama is dealing more with Africa, and I cover all topics, not just 5G, but also fixed networks, AI, cloud, anything related to policy and partnerships. And we do a lot around training and skills development as well, including a lot around the 5G and digital transformation and things. So that's what I do. Thank you.
Okay. And so now in this conversation around the migration or the transition from 4G now to 5G, and I'm going to start with you, Adam. This is a question I'd like to float to the to every panelist, but just starting with you. In your own experience and in your own view, what do you think is the biggest enabler or blocker of this transition from 4G to 5G in Africa today?
I think there's a few issues. I think one of which actually is partly on the demand side. I don't think yet there's a wide usage of high capacity solutions like software or apps or content yet. Not that they don't exist, but not a lot of people are aware of like the e-learning, for example, or telemedicine, or using those kinds of things. And especially in the SME side and business side, I still think there's also a lack of usage as well of such software and solutions. So I think that's one of the challenges, that until we have really a lot of users, both individuals and homes and businesses, wanting and using the high broadband solutions, then you'll see a bigger growth. Like I was reading something this morning where they're slightly tangential, but some people talk about how you need to focus on building the best large language model in the world, for example. Others say it really doesn't matter how good it is. The point is how widely used it is. And that the really smart businesses or countries or whatever are the ones that use it the best. So it doesn't matter how much broadband we have per se, it's whether you're using that broadband to have social benefits or economic benefits or whatever. And I think that's actually where we struggle a bit. There are some really good, I guess, public sector and private sector solutions in this space of education, health, and so on, but there's not actually that good uptake of them. Maybe not good awareness of them. Maybe they're too expensive, or whatever it happens to be. So I think that's the first one. I'm not sure it's an easy one to solve, but I think that's something that we have to look at. We can talk about these issues. I mean, I know that Safaricom worked a lot in the agriculture space, and agriculture is a very difficult space to work in. Digital can really have a huge impact, but it's a hugely fragmented space, right? I don't know, probably 20, 30 million maybe farmers or something in Kenya. Most have got individual smallhold farmers with a few cattle here and there, a few goats here and there, and so on. So it's very hard to roll out solutions to them, especially if they involve hardware, not just software. When you look at the IoT space, for example, doing a software upgrade is one thing. Rolling out new phones or CPEs or IoT cattle trackers is very difficult. I think the second challenge is around the industrial application, especially. I think when you look at the more advanced economies, it doesn't have to just be, China or the US or Europe, even in Thailand, Indonesia, and so on, they've really tried to bring in high-speed digitization into industries, especially healthcare, especially like ports, logistics, and so on. I think we've not yet done that very well here. And maybe the third one related to that, and we'll talk maybe more about 5.5G if we get onto that later, is especially around the IoT side, whether it's high bandwidth IoT like CCTV or low bandwidth IoT like passive IoT and trackers and things like that. I think there's also a huge potential that has not yet, we haven't seen the demand or the business models. And that's my third point. The business model is a really difficult thing to work. Nobody's going to roll out networks or use them if nobody's making money from them. Either the provider of the networks, provider of the applications, the integrators or whatever, or obviously the users. The users are not going to be paying money for something if it doesn't bring them any value either. So that business model is challenging in many countries. And Kenya, of course, and Africa generally is a difficult market. There's not a lot of very high-end businesses or highly profitable businesses or very wealthy people either. So that's why you tend to find in more developed countries, they're able to find easier business models to grow that faster, if I can say that.
Yeah. And so to you now, what in your experience and from your perspective as a regulator and where you're sitting, what are you seeing as the biggest enablers or blockers, or maybe just as regulators yourself, what are you doing in yourself in the position that you are to enable or to further advance this transition from 4G to 5G?
Thank you so much. That's a very pertinent question when you talk about 5G. And from a regulator's point of view, when you look at the market itself, then you look at it, what does it need for it to move and transition and provide, recent technologies to the demand that is out there. One of the key things that we do is we avail spectrum. Spectrum which we have availed in the 2.6. We've also allowed 3.5 gig to be refarmed. This is actually the main driver of 5G. Availability of spectrum is quite key. And I'm glad the operator in one of his slides said that CA has actually done that, and that's enabled them to roll out these services timely and also at a point where Kenyans need these services. Demand is also quite good for 5G. When you look at from the device ecosystem, it's quite picking up. We've seen towns which we never thought would have 5G are now getting 5G, and soon it will actually move to the rural areas. And one of the key things that will drive this, and you saw in the slide, was availability of backhaul. We look at the digital superhighway, which we are concerned as an authority, and we are also doing quite some work in that space, especially in the underserved and unserved areas, where we are making these areas ready for 5G by providing that backhaul. I think those are some of the things that I would highlight that actually, from a regulator's point of view and the Universal Service Fund, we actually do in terms of enabling 5G to be rolled out in these areas. We also do mobile network expansion, and this infrastructure is shareable, and it reduces the cost for rolling out infrastructure in these areas. By and large, I know the rollout of 5G is largely an infrastructure question, and though we have with the funds, we're able to incentivize the operators so they can roll out in these areas whose demand may not be as high, but it grows with time as more more high bandwidth applications get to be adopted in these areas of the country. Thank you so much.
Right. And towards the end there, you've talked about how it's also majorly an infrastructure issue, and you've talked about how we also need to get this 5G into the remotest areas, and that's quite timely because now the next person who is going to speak now around this about who is the enabler and what is the biggest enabler, what is the biggest blocker. James from Safaricom, you've talked about in your presentation earlier the journey with 5G for Safaricom from 1990 to where it is right now, into major towns having 5G. But there are still the very remotest regions that are still struggling. And the infrastructure is there. You talked about the boosters, they're still there. They can be reused for 5G deployment. So in your opinion, the same question is just still, what are the biggest enablers? What's the biggest blocker?
Okay, thank you. So I think just adding to what Adam and Engineer Tigwa said, if I was to look at that problem, is basically like what they mentioned. I would bucket it in three segments. For example, I would say what's the support the regulator has given us. I know I said excellent support has been given to Kenya, but we are discussing here Africa in general. What support does regulators need to do across the continent to probably get them to where Kenya is? So I'd still say in some markets that could be a challenge, but gladly speaking that has been unlocked in Kenya. The second bucket, I would look at it from the customer point, because who will invest in these 5G devices? It's a customer. It's you at the end of the day. Typically, if you look at what we are competing against and maybe even complementing against, the fiber product, I know Safaricom gives that router for free. Practically everybody across the world gives the fiber home router for free. But remember, the 5G FWA access terminal is not given for free. In actual sense, in Kenya, we are spending upwards of $100 to acquire that terminal. So I think there's still a question to answer in terms of affordability, and that's a question that I would probably want to leave to the government and the technocrats to look what needs to be done. Is it to bring the manufacturing locally here in Kenya, or to remove taxes? Maybe a cocktail of solutions that will answer that. And then finally, I'm glad somebody have spoken about USF. It is indeed one of the greatest capex projects that an MNO will undertake. So there's upgrades required on power, there's upgrades required on fiber. That's probably what I would say now is in the provider's hand. But as Adam has mentioned, if the MNO finds profit in it, I can assure you guys, that's why I'm paid a salary to solve those challenges. So as long as the devices are in the hands of the customers and we have the correct spectrum, and the customer demands of it, so there's something a bit to be double clicked on the use cases. I normally take an example, and this is my last one, Kevin. I'm a football fan. I like watching Manchester United, unfortunately. If I am watching Manchester United on a 5G terminal, out of the theoretical threshold I could hit in terms of the 250 Mbps, I'm just using 2 Mbps. So what's happening to the rest of the idle capacity? So that means we need to actually answer that question. Me watching Manchester United on my 5G terminal is not probably the best use of 5G. We need to find other more use cases to fill up this excess capacity that we are providing. Thank you very much.
Wow, that's a great response. Obam, as someone who has been around the continent, working with people, you've introduced here Namibia and Uganda in 5G deployment, and so in the transition now from 4G to 5G, from an African perspective, what would you say is the biggest enabler or the biggest blocker, according to you, that applies to most countries that
Thank you.
worked?
First of all, James doesn't need to apologize. We were not relegated. So we finished number 16. So we are going to be in the league next year. So we'll do it. So we are doing okay. Yeah, we means Manchester United, eh? Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll not answer the question directly, but I did allude to it. The GSMA tells us, James can build a network as much as he wants. Huawei, we can produce as many equipment, the routers, the phones, but we are told that in Kenya, I think there's a difference. Only 37% of the population that is covered uses the network. There's something called the usage gap. GSMA are better at talking about this usage gap. So it means 63% of those covered are not using the network. So that is mainly a 4G issue, and I see this also affecting 5G. So James can go and build his network, but if only 37% are going to use it, then does it make economical sense to build it? So what do we do? He has to build the network, because even me, where I come from in Busia, by the Busia, there are places where there's no 5G. Need to look at that. I must look after my people, right? What do we do? And I think you've mentioned it, Adam also alluded to it. Regulators, government, and even as private sector. Why is there such a big usage gap? Certain things have been identified. I mentioned them. The cost of broadband. In some countries, I can say this, now I'm retired from government, so I can't be demoted. We are charged excise duty on airtime. When we were growing up, excise duty was charged on luxury items, alcohol, cigarettes, perfumes. Shouldn't we be think? Remember one single digital market for Africa. How are we going to achieve it when we are charging this as a luxury item? Devices. I don't know about Uganda, Namibia, and other countries. By the time you import, you pay custom duty, you pay VAT. Of course, we recognize government must raise revenue and pay for a myriad of things, health, education, all this. So a balance has to be reached. So if we are going to actually use this network to transform our economies, we need to look at a solution maybe where we work out what's the benefit of taxing these services vis-a-vis enabling them to reach the people's hands, and what's going to be the resultant economic activity. So the cost of airtime, the cost of the devices, and then the other one is that if you go to my home county, Busia, but then in Uganda also there's Busia, and that's why I feel very close to the Ugandans. That's why I had to introduce them. The people there don't know that actually this service is an enabler. They use it to watch Manchester United lose like 10 games in a season. And they still walk to the local government office to get services. And some of the services are available. So we need to carry out capacity building so that people can see the value of this service and of the devices. So cost, awareness, and now the last one is what we call, remember I talked about relevant local content. When we are developing that paper for ATU, we said we build a network, but James, sorry, TikTok, can we have an equivalent of Kenyan TikTok or East African TikTok with so much following? Imagine if we had a relevant local content, then maybe that can also drive the usage of the network. So we need to address this both in our strategies as private sector, in our regulatory framework, in our policy frameworks. So sort of answering the enablers and also the challenges that I see facing. We have to cross the usage gap, because there's no need of investing these billions of dollars or shillings in this or rand or whichever of currency in building the network, and yet there are people who are living under a tower and they cannot be able to use this, and they have to work for a whole day to go and get a service that's available online in a government office. Thank you.
All right, and okay, thank you very much, Obama. And I'm seeing the main thing, the major thing that people are that you are talking about here is that we have 5G. 5G, it's here, but we're not using it enough. We're not using it the way we're supposed to use it. We're not actually utilizing the infrastructure that we have and 5G to its maximum. Do we now currently have anyone to add with a comment or question or something? Yes. Kindly let's get a mic to her. And while the mic is coming, I'd also like to recognize the presence of Honorable James Ongwae, who is now the chairperson of Universal Universal Service Fund, yeah?
Thank you to the panel and to the keynote speakers. Mine is just an observation. I happen to be, okay, when James was at university, I was still in high school. But I happen to be in that generation that thought that a mobile phone was a very big thing. So by the time Obama was getting his in 97, I think I also got mine thereabouts. But we had to take a loan against our salaries because I just started working, and then pay for it over a period of 1 year. Yeah. But just coming back to the discussion on 5G, I think that there is need. I kept thinking to myself, is 5G part of the mainstream or is it a new thing? How do we view it? Do we view it as part of an existing or part of a new thing? Seeing that, for example, when you look at the way we have illustrated the development across different sectors, I think that maybe there is need to demystify both from the vendors, the service providers, and the regulator a more cost-effective way of adopting 5G. Maybe I'm just speaking from a perspective of theory, but coming from the point where we saw that at one point telecom services were for a classified few, to the point where now we use it for everything. So what can we do differently to demystify? Maybe there will be a 5.5G, 6G, 7G. Does it have to stampede? Does it have to stampede us as a sector? Or can there be a more seamless way of integrating all these developments from the equipment side, from the government side, from the operator side? Thank you.
Okay. Anyone wants to take that?
Let me try. And I'd actually warned Susan not to ask any questions, but she ignored my warning. Yeah, because I knew she would ask such hard questions. Look, we are engineers, most of us, so we like talking about 5G, 6G. For me, I think the basic thing is connectivity, digital transformation. You can connect what you want to connect, when you want to connect it, where you want to connect it, and you solve your problem. So maybe these labels that we've given them as engineers, maybe is because we were given the topic. Maybe we should talk about connectivity for digital transformation. So this becomes just one of the technologies. I can reluctantly say that it can be 5G or fiber or whatever you want to call it. But remember, 97% of our connectivity is through mobile. The best connectivity through mobile is through 5G or 5.5G, by the way you said, which is coming soon already there, or 6G. So I think the important thing for me is meaningful connectivity that delivers services to our African people wherever they are at an affordable price. But as engineers, we must color it with something that sounds mysterious, so that the rest of the world don't have to understand what we are talking about. But it's about speed. The only difference by this is just about speed. From the first text message when we bought our phone, Susan, where first there was no text, then we could text. So telexes died, faxes died. Then we went to internet connectivity. It was just higher speed. Then we could watch videos. Now we can do everything else. The only thing that has changed is actually the speed of the network. But then we can label it that way so that also it sounds nice and sophisticated, I think. Sorry, that's me. I look at it simply as a connectivity issue, and connectivity that solves the problem and delivers on what we want.
I can add, I just want to mention, I think the cost issue, the network will come when there's demand. I think actually the 5G rollout in Kenya has gone faster than probably many people suspected. The reason Airtel and Safaricom rolled out 5G actually pretty fast is because it saves them money. One of their 5G sites can actually cover, from a capacity perspective, not physical distance, about 10 times or more than a 4G site. It's much cheaper to roll out one 5G site than 10 4G sites, obviously. So that's actually why they're very keen to roll out 5G sites. So as more and more demand, you'll get more and more 5G sites. The problem is there's not, as Obama said, not a lot of demand. I think there's three main issues that are affecting the expense aspect of why it's expensive. One being taxes, as he mentioned, on airtime and data bundles or slash data bundles. And it's quite significant. I think it really makes a big difference. The second is the cost of energy. It's also very high in Kenya. I don't know about Uganda. But I know Safaricom and others are trying to use as much solar as possible to reduce the long-term cost of energy. And that's probably the biggest operating cost, I think. And if you look at the whole cost of, say, 10, 20 years, the biggest cost will be energy of 10, 20 years of a network. The second biggest cost could be the steel. And the cost of what Huawei provides is a tiny, tiny little bit of equipment on the top of the tower. Is very little actually compared to the cost of the steel and the cost of the energy. So I think those are the biggest. And the third biggest issue is this issue of way leaves. I don't normally talk about way leaves for fiber, but there's way leaves for fiber in order to build fiber to the tower. Now, you mostly need fiber to a tower. You can use microwave if you want. It's not the best solution. Fiber will be the best option. If you have really expensive recurring costs for fiber to the tower, it also adds a lot of expense. And now some counties in Kenya want to create new way leaves. There's some counties want to create a way leave for you building a tower on private property. It's not county property or government property, it's private property, but somehow they think if it's telecoms infrastructure, they can charge you for a way leave on that, building a tower on private property that you're already paying rent for that land or for that tower. So this also is a real risk to add more and more expense. So I agree that the biggest issue is the demand. And apart from the issue of having the good content like we've discussed, is the affordability, which is, I think, those two issues, the tax issue and the power issues, and then this way leaves and other related issues around that. Thank you.
Kevin, if you allow me, let me just add. There's a time we were doing a paper, and I don't know, James, how many sites you have. They have like thousands, tens of thousands of sites. If you aggregate the amount of power that a mobile operator uses, actually they're one of the biggest consumers of power. They're bigger than some factories. But interestingly, they pay this at the highest rate because they are considered as retail, discrete. But if they were considered as industrial consumers, maybe that can help reduce power. Another thing I wanted to point out is that about 5 years ago, I was in a spectrum discussions for Sub-Saharan Africa. And we were told that as Africans, we wait for 5G until 2030. It is not coming. Africa is not ready for 5G. Adam, I think you were in that meeting. And surprise, surprise, 1 year later, companies started launching 5G. So we talk about these timelines, but I think, as Adam says, demand. If there's demand for these kinds of speeds, then the operators will be incentivized to actually build them. And please don't listen to the naysayers. You know, the mobile, for me, has leveled the playing field for Africa. When 30 years ago, the waiting line for a telephone in Kenya was like 25 or 30 years. If we applied for a phone, you expected to get a fixed phone in 25. I'm sure it was the same in Uganda. And we used to measure telephony, the number of lines per 100 inhabitants. Engineer Leo Boret is here from CA. Kenya, I think we are doing very well. We are at 0.1 person per 100. No, 0.1 lines per 100. Some countries were in a much, much smaller unit. Mobile has brought us to where we are today, where if you believe what CA publishes, we have got more connections than people in Kenya. So this is a technology that actually we have to harness. Let's not look for other solutions. I think the solution is here. Unless something comes that can really do what mobile has done to our continent in the last 20 to 25 years, I think we can use this with other technologies to just move our continent forward. Thank you.
Okay, now maybe I can involve James also as well as Obega. And when we talk about 5G, there is also an issue of creating or worsening the digital divide, because you've talked about how expensive it is for some people to even maybe just get on TikTok. You know, in Nairobi it's easier. You can do this 5G, but you've talked about how in Busia in your home. Also in my home, when I normally go home, it's normally difficult to get a connection. There's some sport you have to know. So maybe how can we ensure that 5G doesn't worsen the digital divide? And I'll start with you, Wabega.
Thank you, moderator. When you look at 5G and its rollout, which is thought to be expensive, and the devices also that come with it are thought to be expensive, then you'd find the device ecosystem probably may not support 5G. So right now we actually boast of a population coverage with mobile of about 96.6% coverage. This is largely 2G, and we have 4G at about 94%, thereabouts. But then now you look at what Obama was saying earlier, which is the usage gap that is actually being created. So the divide actually is on the usage currently as we speak. In terms of coverage, you are pretty somewhere good, we can say, in terms of mobile broadband. But now when it comes now to the usage, it's south of probably 40%. Which keeps growing. I think the census figures in 2019 reported at about 23, but it has been growing all the same. So when issues of affordability and things to deal with relevant content that is available there, there is a lot that is happening in that space. You've heard about talk of digitalizing government services, which is what many Kenyans would want to access. These have been put on mobile platforms. We have the e-citizen, which is also taking shape, and also devices are starting to come low in terms of we have local manufacturing that's putting 5G. We also upload what private sector is doing. In this case, the Lipa Mdogo Mdogo, just to put smart devices in people's hands so that they're able to access these high-speed networks for their own socio-economic welfare. Thank you.
Okay, and how about you, James? What do you think of?
Yeah, I think I really echo with what Engineer Atego was saying. If you look at it in terms of the customer, because we still need to take care of that delta for the customer to be able to afford to migrate. It's amazing. Some users are migrating directly from 2G to 5G. You can imagine, Engineer Obamia showed a number of 2.5. The percentage improvement in GDP for somebody from 4G to 5G was 2.5, or was it 3G to 5G? But you can imagine the transformation it does on the GDP if the move is straight from 2G to 5G. So for me, the challenge is here, and it is with the relevant industry players in terms of making these devices more affordable. I can assure you, with the Kenyan consumer, what we've observed is that when you give them something that is meaningful, observable, and I'm sure this resonates with the entire continent, there will definitely be an uptake for it. And the challenge is two-pronged. It is in the handheld mobile devices that you have and the FWA terminals that we now give to remote access. Susan, you are kinder. There's a question who asked me the same question you asked in this forum from Turkana, but he used the most choicest words. He actually told me, Langat, I don't care how you bring internet to me. If you want to bring it in a bucket every morning, so be it. And what was the context? I was busy pitching in my technology hat. I was busy pitching to that customer how he should move now from an almost forgotten technology called WiMAX. You can imagine, Jackie, we used to sell WiMAX to our customers. So the truth is, a lot of the MNOs, Safaricom being one of them, are now moving to selling connectivity, not the technology. The same package that you get from FWA is the same package that you get in fiber, albeit we can never run away from the physical limits of those two technologies, but that is how it is marketed. To close on your question, Kevin, I think on the operator side, pretty obvious, but Engineer Tego, I don't want a target for 5G coverage. The country has done a national broadband paper that defines what would be the acceptable minimum speeds for the operators to meet. The current limit if I am not confused, is 3 Mbps. 3 Mbps, how you can meet it by 5G. But I believe as an industry and a sector, it's just so that we make sure that we don't leave any region behind. There's always tools in our toolbox that we can do, like for example sector papers. When you do national policy papers like that, we can gradually be improving the target speeds for operators. Internally at Safaricom, we have improved our own target. We thought 3 Mbps is not a fair reflection of the customer demand currently. I've improved it to a number which I will not say here, but those are some of the tactics that we can use. And this particular fund called the Universal Services Fund, we used to use it just to grow our mobile penetration. We are now at 96-97%. So rather than spend billions reaching the remaining 3%, why don't we spend part of that fund in ensuring that the 96 that is covered by broadband, which is 5G as a technology, but now the backhaul that comes with it. So that's how I would approach that challenge. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. That's a very good response. Do we have any further questions or comments yet? Oh yes, now the hands are coming. In. I like it when I get. Should we? Okay, let's start with you.
Okay. My name is Jeff Dego of Kind Engineering. Good discussion. My concern is about power usage, and I think that is one of the greatest expense that you have. And I would wish to understand and how progressively are you going to change this scenario, because though you are using solar, are you able to take advantage of carbon credit currently? Because if, let's say, you solarize all the towers, that one, of course, will give you an exchange for carbon credit, and that one can also be able to help. Then I needed also to understand, with that 7% uptick of this 5G, and as a business person, what incentivizes you to do some places like in the remote area to take this 5G? You know, everything is business here. So I'm wondering, I've been working somewhere remote in Turkana, and I was wondering, you want to take 5G there, and with that 7% uptick, what you have told us, as a business person, what really will it make me economic sense to do that business? Yet that 7%, will I ever break even?
Thank you. My name is Frida Inchoga from the Tony Blair Institute. I'm circling back to the 37% of Kenyans connected but not using the, no, it's 37% that are using the network, and so there's a staggering almost 60% of non-usage. So my question will be to the Communications Authority. So there's been varied suggestions around the application of USF. And I think from Huawei, they also spoke about how there's fragmented space when it comes to usage, especially for industrial development. And this could be a breakthrough area. For example, if industry started to uptake, you know, more usage of 5G, then it will make sense, because then there'll be more and more use cases. My question is specifically on what you see as possible inroads or runways to encourage industrial development in this use. Yes, it's important that individuals like our friend James watching Manu, it's good, but you see it's low utilization. But how about industries, and how does the regulators see themselves supporting that that scope of development? Thank you.
Okay, one last question.
My name is Bethwell Lalire from Metropole Corporation. I'll go straight to my question. So you have seen a rollout of the low Earth orbiting satellites like Starlink, right? Which comes with fast speeds and the the rollout has been across continents, right? And here in Kenya, we have seen high uptake, right? So looking at the future, right, of these low Earth orbiting satellites, how does it compare to the future of 5G, 6G?
Should we start with that? Or maybe, Frida had posed a question for CA. Maybe we can start with.
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent question with regards to application review yourself for industrial. When you look at the principles of universal service access, it's largely on the public access. Yeah, everybody has to access. It's a basic right. What you call, not really a basic right per se as of now, but we actually look at access to information and ICTs as a basic right from where we sit, because then when individuals don't access this internet, then there's going to be a schism between them and their maybe country, probably urban folks vis-a-vis the rural area. The divide is so more pronounced at an individual level. Now at an industrial scale, and that is where maybe a concern which we also have as a regulator, is that the vertical industries in terms of uptaking 5G hasn't been that well developed like in the rural areas. When you look at the urban centers, the demand is there for faster internet, and you've seen areas like financial sector, they have come in strongly to uptake most of this and even develop applications for their customers to access their services in this space. Now, when you look at the industrial side, then it's really, and USF is really a moving target. Once we're able to capture the public access, they're able to access, then probably we might look at other areas of the industries that is lacking. But as we speak right now, where we talk about 37 access, we're looking at it from an individual perspective and not an industrial access per se. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll go for the two questions that were posed on power. Yeah, so good question. I think I mentioned before, we are seeing almost a 42% jump in power consumption every time we introduce 5G. With that, of course, comes instability, and fortunately, you're right, well observed, most of the incidents on power. So what is being done in this space? So the first thing that we are looking to do is to modernize infrastructure. In actual sense, we are in a modernization program where we are actually trying to, if you're familiar with the structure of a base station, we are trying to improve the voltages that we are using on the base stations. We use DC, so when you increase that voltage, you are able to reduce the current that is within the cables. And I'm conscious I'm taking you back to class, but that entire modernization program is being undertaken now to make sure that our energy systems are fit for purpose. Yeah, I must admit that we've seen improvement in terms of Kenya Power grid stability, but it's not where we would want it to be. We are at an average 91% availability across the country, but what happens to the 9%? Does the mobile customer allowed to be down for 9% of the time? No. That means we also now have to supplement for that 9%. Previously, we've supplemented for that 9% using generators. That is expensive and dirty, if I just went straight to the point. So we are currently doing a program to just try and enhance our power in terms of modernization, and now to provide for the missing 9% with a cleaner and greener use. And for sure, we are getting carbon credits for that. So I expect in the program that we'll be doing this year, maybe 1,500 sites will benefit heavily from carbon credits. And then in terms of the specific areas you could have observed 5G, I said before, our 5G rollout is highly informed by the availability of devices, and we are currently also using it as an offload for 5G. So the area you mentioned, that county, you find maybe the sparse population around the county, but in the towns, there's very high concentration of individuals with devices. So you'll definitely find 5G in those kind of scenarios where we are trying to offload 4G, and this is something that we are promised to do to make sure the entire country is covered with what I would call a hotspot coverage before we finally make it continuous. Thank you. I think
Yeah.
I don't know if any of us are satellite experts, but in the absence of that, I can make an attempt
Yes.
to talk about NGSOs. Let me maybe give a policy and regulatory answer. Then maybe I'll talk about the technical issues about these non-GSO or low Earth orbit satellites. In our countries in Africa, we have enterprises that we have licensed that has employed our people, that pay taxes, that collect our data and keep this data safe. Then you have an enterprise that comes that you don't even know if they have an office in your country, and they are collecting your citizens' data. They are collecting the money. They are not paying taxes. They are not employing anyone. If we want to develop our continent and we want to have digital transformation, which one of those enterprises would you go for? Plus many other things. So that's the political, not policy and regulatory question. The technical response would be that, remember I said that all technologies have room as long as they are solving our problems. The day James puts up the 5G station in Busia where I live, and then he tells me that, oh, we are full, we can't connect to you. I don't think Safaricom has ever done that. Some of the NGSOs, the operators, I don't know in Kenya now whether you can be connected to one that is known. They said, oh, the network is full, you have to wait for us to build before we can connect you. So do we have time to wait for people to build their infrastructure? The third question is the issue of devices. If you take the broadband version of this low Earth orbits, it's probably fixed in your home or in your office. And then you want to go to your local. For those who have locals, those who don't know what locals are, ask your neighbor. Those who know, please understand. How are you going to be connected once you leave your house? So as much as these technologies have a place, but the mobility is providing us with flexibility. So what has happened? In 2027, we are now discussing within the ITU how these technologies can use existing mobile devices so that's seamless. The thing is, between Kenya and Uganda, if there's interference and the guy interfering, you don't even know where it's coming from, how are you going to resolve it? Today, my colleagues from CA, Leo here and Edwin, Engineer Mbega, whenever there's a problem, they were in Busia about 2 months ago, there was a interference. So they drove to Busia, I don't know if they drove, maybe they have a helicopter. The guys from UCC came and they were able to find out what the problem was. If the thing is 800 kilometers in the sky and it's causing interference between one operator in Kenya and one operator in Uganda, where will you go? So one of the things we are studying now in the ITU is to use these satellites to cover unserved and unserved areas using current devices like my 5G phone that I've kept on telling you I have, and maybe your 2G phone that you have. So that is still under discussion, and the actual regulatory and technical parameters are going to be decided at the World Radio Conference in 2027. But basically, there are the policy issues which I think are serious today. The issue of data protection is an important one. Unless you don't believe in it, then you can let your citizens' data to just go where you want it, where it goes, to one company that one day can decide they are disconnecting you because maybe you didn't say a nice thing on a platform that the owner but maybe I'm exaggerating, but diversity is important in terms of delivering services. And that's why our regulators have more than 2 operators in most of our countries, so that By the way, I'll confess, although I have my main supplier of connectivity for those many years, I have another one. The day they don't supply me services, I just switch the other one. I have options, but they have like 3 other options in Kenya. And I'm sure it's the same thing in other countries. So the issue of option is important. I think we need to have the technologies working together. The mobile industry, we've had technologies developed in other parts of the world, and they work together. It doesn't matter where your mobile phone comes from. It will work. When you put it on, it works. So I think that the issue of non-geostationary satellites for bridging the digital divide is being looked at, and we hope we can be able to find both regulatory and technical solutions in WRC 27 so that they can complement the networks where James was supplying G3s, so they can you can use that area instead of building a tower. You can use the satellites to cover that because they are good for those kinds of areas. In a very long roundabout manner, I hope I've addressed your question. Thank you.
Adam, also maybe you can take a hit at that satellite and low-flowing orbit satellites and their effects on 5G.
Yeah, it's a question we could, I think, certainly me and Obama have discussed in the office for many hours, sometimes over the evenings into the next day. There are a lot of very interesting issues I think the LEOs have brought out, which I think many of the world is struggling with, and it's really good they brought out these issues. So some of those companies are not very open or interoperable with their technologies. They are the only ones that will sell you the dish on your home that will connect to the satellite in the sky. You cannot, with normal routers, it's not true. You can go a Safaricom network for home, you can get a Huawei router or a fiber home router, whatever. With a mobile phone, of course, you can get many mobile phones. They all connect to their network. And that's actually quite important and helpful. With the LEOs, often you don't get that choice. You're forced to buy only one dish from one provider, who sometimes has very unusual and very dramatically changing pricing structures, with very frequently changing incentives for their retailers, and a lot of instability in their pricing. And that's not only for the dishes, but also for the actual packages. I believe the CA regulates all pricing in Kenya for telecoms. If you want to do a special incentive package for a month or 2 months, as a new operator, you're allowed to do that, for example, but it has to be for a defined period of time and a defined price. You can't undercut the market and drive someone out of business, for example. And that's part of your regulatory environment, which is important, not just in telecoms. I think many other industries are the same. And you need to have that ability as a regulator to regulate everyone in that way. Some operators in the satellite space don't give you fixed pricing or longer term pricing. They retain the right to change their price month by month. That could be good, because you can end your contract early if you wanted to, or it could be bad. You invested in their dish, which nobody else is allowed to sell you, and you can't replace with any other dish because it won't work with their network. And the next month they can quadruple the price, or double the price, or maybe half the price as well, right? So it could go both ways. But my point is, it's very interesting regulatory issues that are bringing out, as well as the others that Engineer Obama mentioned. Technically, there's a huge limitations to what satellites can provide in terms of the actual capacity per satellite, based on number of users on the ground. So you have to have a huge number of satellites, which is okay, I suppose. We don't think it makes sense from an urban perspective at all, when you already have strong mobile networks, and you have, in many cases, fiber networks as well. But it's good to have backup options. In the rural area, it certainly makes sense to have something like that could cover very, very remote areas. From my economic perspective, it's really interesting looking longer term. People are saying most of these satellites have to be replaced every 5 years. So though they're quite cheap to put up into space nowadays by certain operators, they still have to be replaced frequently. And there's a lot of other issues related to that as well. So I don't know what the model will look like. Of course, the mobile industry and fiber industry, the model has been quite developed now, 20, 30 years worth of mobile and fiber networks. With the LEO network, we don't quite know how the economics will work out. So it's quite risky if you become reliant on it. But certainly having as a backup option or a third or fourth option is, I think, sensible to have that option. But there's a risk that certain countries could become reliant on it. And if others get put out of business because of the kind of pricing structures, that could be highly risky. Irrelevant of the ownership issues, but just having reliance on only one technology is not a very good option. I want to add two other quick points on the 2 other questions that came up. About the 37% usage gap, this, I believe, is based on the entire population of Kenya. I don't think that's a fair statistic. Now the question is, what cutoff do you want? Do you want to say 30? Do you want to say a population of all people in Kenya, all adults in Kenya, or adults plus students, or adults plus youth, or adults plus infants? So I assume you wouldn't want to count, say, under 5-year-olds. I don't think that it'd be expected to be online. Under 10-year-olds, probably not either. So I don't know, it depends on the age. Some countries now limit internet access, or social media access at least anyway, to 13 and above. Some are talking of 16 and above. So if you said, say, 13 and above, maybe that's a reasonable number of who should be online. Maybe 10, I don't know. It would be more than 37%. The usage gap would be much lower than that. Maybe I would think we're looking at 60% of Kenyans above the age of 13 are probably online, which doesn't, because I feel 37% is not realistic from the rural areas I go to. It's not that bad. So I think it's more like 60% if you look at the denominator of over 13 or over 15s. But that brings up a very important question, which actually I was talking with the CA people about recently. How do you measure? The I2 has some measurements. They're not great, and they don't adapt very frequently, as Daniel mentioned. They only change their spectrum rules every 4 years. Spectrum is a very difficult, complex issue, and it requires almost harmonization globally. It can be done regionally as well. But other things around monitoring and evaluation indicators can be done at a national level and can be done more frequently. So I think the government is looking at a new national broadband strategy, and we're really encouraging the team working on that to look at some indicators just for Kenya, for their strategy, that will help monitor these things like usage gap and decide, should it be 13 years old or 10 years old or 5 years old or whatever, where we can look at where these measurements should make sense. Because that, I think, would be useful to know where we're really at. My last point, I think, was mentioned, maybe USF is not the tool for investing in industrial use of technology, but should there be other tools for that, other funds? A large number of countries, including developing countries in Asia and Latin America, have R&D funds, research funds for supporting industry digitization. It doesn't have to be from a USF, it could be from other means. Kenya has a national research fund. It's not that well funded, unfortunately, but this is a space we should be looking at, I think. R&D in Kenya, including research into and encouraging and incentivizing those to use it. And it's not like money's being thrown away, right? When you have these kind of funds, they're supposed to deliver on results. If you're going to give the money to a port or to a warehouse, you have to deliver some outcomes. It's not just his money, build a network. It's his money. You have to then improve your efficiency by 20 or 30%. Or you have to do something that achieves social outputs, right? Like do a pilot. I know in Thailand, there was some funding for telemedicine and ambulances that used 5G. And the measurables were how many lives were being saved from using 5G in their ambulances. So it wasn't money thrown away building network per se. It was actually helping improve lives. And that's a better way of thinking about funding for industry digitization. It does have social economic impact. It's not just helping warehouses be more efficient. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Now, in the interest of time, I think it's we should be winding up right now, and we've talked about a lot on the challenges, on the blockers that are affecting 5G or the migration from 4G to 5G. But now, what are the opportunities that 5G poses to us? And maybe in a minute each, starting from Obama.
The opportunities to enable the digital transformation of our economy through meaningful connectivity that can spur innovation and even create jobs for our youth.
Yeah, for me, it just represents an opportunity to democratize broadband access to entire communities and to enable the economic transformation that comes from a connected society.
Thank you so much. One of the applications of 5G is in provision of fixed wireless access. One of the government documents that was highlighted earlier about called the Digital Master Plan aims to target 12 million homes to connect them. I think this is a very good target that 5G can achieve. When we roll out fiber to nodes, we can use the 5G fixed wireless application as a use case to connect these 12 million homes. So that's a very good opportunity that I see 5G can help us in terms of delivering services to Kenyans. Thank you.
Okay, and since I don't want to repeat what everyone else has already said, but I did mention earlier about 5.5G, maybe I'll just say my 1 minute on that topic.
Yeah.
But has anyone here been to Decathlon and bought anything from Decathlon? Okay. Who's used the expressway in Nairobi? Okay, so Decathlon, you use RFID to pay. You put all your items in a big basket at the till, and automatically it tells you how much you have to pay. Because it's basically scanning all the little stickers on your clothes or sports items in the shopping basket. You haven't got to scan the barcode one by one by one. That's using what they call RFID technology. The expressway uses something similar if you have the little device in the vehicle as well. That distance is very, very short range, a few meters, sometimes a few inches, depending on the power that you have in the device. 5.5G brings something that I think will be really revolutionary for developing countries, which is called passive IoT. So like that RFID, but for 100 or 200 meters distance. So imagine your little router, whether it's Wi-Fi or 5G, and actually the Wi-Fi and 5G actually almost combining into one or converging into one nowadays in the future. But anyway, the point is, in one warehouse, every second of the day, you can know what is in that warehouse. If everything in that warehouse has got a 3-cent sticker on it, which is what your clothes have in Decathlon. For me, that will be really, really revolutionary for logistics and warehousing and medicine and many other aspects, and agriculture as well, and can have huge impact. So we haven't got time now. I hope next year, if the rapporteur's in the room, this session will not be called 5G, it will be called 5.5G at Connected Africa Summit 2026. And we can talk more. And 5.5G will be rolled out, I think, by that point in some countries. I can't talk on behalf of Safaricom, obviously. But passive IoT, for me, something to look forward to for next year. Thank you.
Wow. That's something that I really personally will be looking forward to. Anyway, thank you very much, gents. And I think we have something here for everyone. So yeah, thank you to you all as well. We started the session talking about 5G. We've ended up with 5.5G, and that's progress, yeah? Anyway, yeah. Round of applause again for my panelists, and